I didn't scream when my husband disappeared. I didn't break things, didn't beg, didn't chase answers. Instead, I smiled. Because deep down, something felt wrong. Not broken, staged. Everyone believed I had been abandoned. My father made sure of that. But 6 months later, when I found my husband covered in dust, lifting bricks like a stranger, I realized something far worse than betrayal had happened. And what I did next didn't just expose the truth. It destroyed a man who thought he controlled everything. If you like emotional stories with shocking twists, subscribe now and tell me in the comments, have you ever trusted someone completely? I was born into power, but I never let it define what I loved. At 35, I was the face of a billion-dollar real estate empire, a name people respected before I even spoke. But none of that mattered when I was home. Because home was Daniel. He wasn't rich. He didn't come from influence or legacy. He came from honesty, from effort, from a life built with his own hands. And that was exactly why I chose him. For 7 years, we built something real together. Not just a marriage, but a quiet, grounded life behind all the noise of my world. And then there was our daughter, Lily, the only thing we both loved more than each other. People said I married beneath me. But they never understood. I married above everything that money could buy. And maybe that's exactly why someone wanted to take it away from me. My father never said he hated Daniel. He didn't have to. Richard Laurent controlled everything: business, reputation, legacy. And in his world, love was just another liability. From the moment he met Daniel, I saw it in his eyes. Not anger, calculation. Like he was measuring how much damage one ordinary man could do to everything he had built. At dinners, he'd smile, but his words always carried weight. Some people aren't prepared for this life, Isabella. It sounded like concern. It wasn't. It was a warning. He offered Daniel opportunities, high-paying roles, connections, influence. Not as kindness, but as a test. And when Daniel refused, choosing to stay independent, I knew my father took it personally. Control was everything to him. And Daniel was the one thing he couldn't control. That's when the tension stopped being subtle and started becoming dangerous. It started small, almost invisible. One morning, Daniel told me someone had come by the house asking questions. Nothing aggressive, just curious. Too curious. About his routine, our daughter, our schedule. I brushed it off at first. In my world, attention came with the territory. But then little things began to shift. Meetings I never scheduled appeared on my calendar. Deals started failing without explanation. People I trusted began acting distant. And my father? He became unusually present. Calling more. Showing up unannounced. Asking about Daniel in a tone that felt too casual to be innocent. Everything stable at home, he'd ask. Stable. Like he was checking something. Like he was waiting for something to break. That's when the unease settled in my chest. Because it no longer felt like coincidence. It felt like someone was slowly tightening a grip I couldn't see. It happened in a room full of people. A charity gala. Cameras, investors, partners, my world on display. Daniel stood beside me, calm as always. But my father, he chose that moment. In the middle of a conversation, loud enough for others to hear, he smiled and said, "Not everyone here understands the level we operate at." Silence followed. People glanced at Daniel. Some with pity. Others with judgment. I felt it instantly, the shift. The humiliation. Daniel didn't react. He just nodded slightly, like he was absorbing it, storing it somewhere deep. But I saw his hand tighten. That night, on the way home, he was quieter than usual. Too quiet. I asked what was wrong. He looked at me, forced a small smile, and said, "Nothing. I'm just thinking." But I knew Daniel. And whatever he was thinking, it wasn't something small anymore. The next morning, Daniel was gone. No goodbye, no argument, no warning. Just absence. At first, I thought he had gone out early. But hours passed. His phone was off. His car was still in the garage. And then I noticed it. Lily's room was empty. Her favorite blanket gone. Her small shoes missing. The silence in that space, it wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. On the kitchen counter, there was a single envelope. Inside, divorce papers. Signed. No explanation. No message. No trace of the man I knew. My chest tightened in a way I had never felt before. Not anger, something colder. Something deeper. Because Daniel would never leave like that. Never take our daughter without telling me. Never disappear without a fight. But to everyone else, it looked obvious. He left. And somehow, I had the terrifying feeling that this wasn't his decision. So whose was it? I didn't cry in front of anyone. Not when the lawyers called. Not when the board started whispering. Not even when the media painted me as the powerful woman who had been left behind. I stayed composed. Cold. Controlled. Because the moment I broke, I knew my father would step in to fix everything. And he did. Too quickly. He told me Daniel had always been insecure. That he couldn't handle my world. That men like him eventually run when they feel small. It sounded logical. Convincing. But something inside me refused to accept it. So I stopped asking questions out loud. And started listening in silence. I signed nothing. I confronted no one. I just watched. Because if this was really what it looked like, why did it feel like I was being guided toward believing it? And more importantly, who was pulling the strings behind my back? I stopped reacting and started thinking. Grief wanted me to collapse. Anger wanted me to explode. But neither would give me the truth. So I chose something else. Patience. I replayed everything, every look, every word, every silence Daniel had left behind. The way his hand tightened at the gala. The way he said, "I'm just thinking." That wasn't a man preparing to leave. That was a man under pressure. And then there were the divorce papers. Too clean. Too fast. Too convenient. My father pushed me to sign them almost daily. Calm voice, persuasive tone, subtle urgency. Dragging this out will only hurt you more, Isabella. No. It would hurt him more. That's when it became clear. This wasn't about my pain. It was about control. So I played along. I acted tired. Defeated. Almost ready to give in. But inside, I made a decision. I wouldn't chase Daniel. I would wait for the truth to come to me. And when it did, I would be ready. To everyone watching, my father had already won. 6 months passed, and I let the illusion breathe. I attended meetings. Smiled when expected. Even entertained conversations with men my father approved. I became exactly what he needed me to be, compliant, wounded, slowly moving on. Inside, I was counting. Every inconsistency. Every detail that didn't align. My father stopped pressuring me as intensely. That alone told me something. He believed time had done his work for him. But time doesn't erase truth. It exposes patterns. Daniel's bank activity had frozen the day he disappeared. No withdrawals, no spending. That wasn't a man starting over. That was a man surviving, carefully. And Lily. No school records. No medical visits. No trace in any system I could access. It was as if they had both vanished, strategically. Not recklessly. Which meant one thing I couldn't ignore anymore. Daniel didn't run from me. He was hiding from something. And the only person powerful enough to force that kind of disappearance was the man sitting across from me at dinner, pretending everything was normal. So I kept playing my role. But inside, I was getting closer. I stopped asking questions directly. That was my first real decision. Instead, I watched my father. Richard Laurent had habits, small ones that only mattered when you paid attention long enough. The way he ended calls too quickly when a certain name was mentioned. The way his assistant would suddenly clear rooms when Daniel came up in conversation. The way he always changed the subject when Lily was mentioned. At first, it looked like avoidance. Now it looked like control. I also began tracing the people around Daniel before he disappeared. Not friends, pressure points. People who owed my father favors. Contractors. Security firms. Legal intermediaries. The pattern wasn't random. It was coordinated. One night, I overheard my father speaking on the phone. He did what was necessary. That's all that matters. Necessary. My stomach tightened. Because no one disappears for necessary reasons unless someone else defines necessity for them. I didn't confront him. I smiled at dinner that night. And in that silence, I made my real decision. I would not look for Daniel. I would reconstruct the moment he was taken from me. I didn't hire detectives. I hired memory. Every employee who had worked for my father's security division in the past 5 years, quietly, anonymously, I started reviewing their histories. Not as Isabella Laurent the daughter, but as Isabella Laurent the strategist. One name kept repeating across old contracts: Blackridge Consulting. Officially, they handled logistics. Unofficially, they handled people. And Daniel's name appeared once. Buried in a disposal authorization file signed 2 days before his disappearance. Not a resignation. A directive. My hands didn't shake when I saw it. That surprised me. Because inside that document was proof of something simple and devastating. My father didn't just know Daniel would leave. He arranged the conditions for it. And Lily's removal? Mentioned as protective relocation of dependent minor. Protective. A lie written in legal ink. I closed the files slowly. No rage. No tears. Just clarity. For the first time, I wasn't chasing a missing husband. I was building a case against my own father. And I had just found the first real thread that could unravel everything. The moment I touched Blackridge Consulting, I knew I wasn't alone in the game anymore. Within 48 hours, someone tried to erase the trail. Old files disappeared from a private archive server I had access to. Access logs were cleaned. Even my secure channels showed brief interference, subtle, almost elegant. My father wasn't guessing anymore. He was responding. That's when I understood the danger had shifted. Not Daniel's disappearance. Not the divorce papers. Me. I reduced my digital footprint immediately, switching everything to offline storage, handwritten notes, and encrypted physical drives. It felt almost primitive, but safer. Then came the second shock. A former Blackridge coordinator agreed to meet me. Quietly. In person. One condition: no recording devices. He looked nervous before I even sat down. "You're digging into something your father buried for a reason," he said. Daniel didn't leave because he wanted to. My heart didn't race. It froze. But before he could say more, his phone rang. He saw the caller ID and stood up immediately. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. And walked away. Leaving me with one question burning louder than anything else. What exactly was my father afraid I would find? After that meeting, I understood something I didn't want to accept. I wasn't just being watched. I was being contained. So I made my sacrifice. I removed myself from the center of Laurent Global Holdings. Officially, it looked like exhaustion. A temporary withdrawal for personal recovery. My father approved it too quickly. That alone confirmed I was moving in the right direction. What I didn't tell him was that I was freeing my time and my access. I sold a private asset quietly, one property my father had never fully integrated into corporate records. The money wasn't important. The independence was. With it, I built a small, invisible investigative network outside his influence. No names tied to Laurent. No patterns he could track. Just silence and persistence. Days later, I received something unexpected. A message. No sender. Just coordinates and a time. And one line. You're looking in the wrong place. My breath slowed. Because someone was now watching me too. And they knew exactly where to pull me next. I didn't go to the coordinates immediately. That would have been the old version of me, reacting, rushing, hoping. Instead, I studied them. The location pointed to an abandoned construction zone on the outskirts of the city. One of my father's old development projects, shut down years ago after budget restructuring. I knew that language. It usually meant something was buried, not forgotten. So I prepared carefully. I didn't go alone, but I didn't trust anyone either. Every step I took was controlled, every movement intentional. I arrived just before sunset. And that's when I saw him. Daniel. Not the man I remembered. Not polished, not protected. Covered in dust, hands rough, wearing a labor uniform like it had become part of his skin. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He saw me, and didn't move. Not surprise. Fear. He walked closer slowly, like he was deciding something he couldn't undo. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. And then, before I could answer, he whispered something that made everything collapse inside me. They found you faster than I hoped. I did it to protect you. That's the first thing Daniel said when I finally forced my voice to work again. And then, everything broke open. He told me about that night. My father didn't just pressure him. He came with men. With proof. With threats carefully designed to feel like inevitability. They showed him photos of Lily being watched. Routes she took to school. Moments no stranger should have known. And then the ultimatum. Leave. Sign the divorce. Disappear. Or Lily would disappear first. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't fight. He obeyed to buy time. He took Lily with him through help from someone inside my father's network, his sister. They hid her safely, away from all systems my father controlled. Every abandonment was staged. Every document was forced. And I had been guided to believe the lie. That night, I called a private emergency meeting at Laurent headquarters. Board members. Investors. Family. My father. When everyone was seated, I stood up. And for the first time, I didn't speak as his daughter. I spoke as his consequence. I presented everything. The Blackridge file. The disposal order. The surveillance proof. Daniel's testimony. The room didn't explode. It went silent. And in that silence, my father finally understood. He wasn't in control anymore. My father didn't speak when the evidence finished playing in front of everyone. The Blackridge documents. The signed disposal order. The surveillance logs. Daniel's testimony, clear and unshakable. Even the room's silence felt heavier than any accusation. Richard Laurent finally understood something he had never believed possible. He had lost control. The board members didn't argue. They didn't defend him. They asked questions, sharp, clinical ones. And every answer he tried to give collapsed under the weight of proof. Within hours, emergency votes were called. He was removed as CEO. Suspended from all decision-making. Legal investigations were initiated the same day. But the real collapse wasn't corporate. It was personal. I looked at him across that long table. The man who had built my world and destroyed my marriage to protect his image of it. You didn't protect me, I said quietly. You controlled me. For the first time, he had no answer. No manipulation left. No voice left. Just consequence. Outside that room, everything unraveled quickly. His assets were frozen during investigation. Partners withdrew within days. His reputation, the only thing he ever truly worshipped, collapsed faster than his empire ever rose. And Daniel stood beside me. Still silent. Still steady. But no longer hidden. Lily was safe. She had been with Daniel's sister the entire time, protected in another city under a legal arrangement he had forced my father's system to accept under false documentation. Every abandonment story my father created was now exposed as fabrication backed by coercion. There was no missing piece anymore. Only truth. That night, I returned to my father's house one last time. Not as his daughter who needed approval, but as someone who no longer belonged to his world. I'm leaving, I said. He didn't stop me. He couldn't. Because power means nothing when no one believes your version of reality anymore. I walked out with Daniel and Lily waiting outside. No empire. No inheritance. No illusion of control. Just us. Weeks later, we started over in a quiet place far from everything that once defined my name. Daniel worked again, not as a man hiding, but as someone building. I rebuilt too, but differently. No empire. No legacy. Just something real. Sometimes I think about how close I came to believing the lie. And I remember what Daniel told me the night I found him. I didn't disappear because I stopped loving you. I disappeared so you could survive loving me. Now I understand. Not all imprisonment looks like walls. Some of them are built by family. And sometimes, freedom costs everything you thought you needed. But I didn't lose my life. I finally got it back. If this story moved you, take a second to like the video so more people can experience it too. Subscribe to the channel for more emotional, cinematic stories about love, betrayal, and silent revenge that change everything in the end. And before you go, leave a comment telling me what you would have done in my place, and where you're watching from.